So you may see a little notification pop up on your end. Just let you know the meeting is being recorded. We do this so that if you have neighbors or anybody who wasn't able to attend tonight, this meeting will be available for them on Metro's website here in a few days. As we get started, let me introduce myself. My name is Jeff Hammond. I'm a consultant with a group called Birch Transportation, working on behalf of NDOT. That's the Nashville Department of Transportation that you see down in the bottom right-hand corner. And thanks for joining us tonight as we talk about traffic calming project on Harpeth Valley Road. I see Councilwoman Wheeler is on the call with us as well. So welcome, council member. If there's anything you'd like to say, feel free to do that as we get started. She may have stepped away or may be muted. I will say this as we go through the meeting tonight. We're a small group, and so we always allow folks to unmute themselves, make any comments, ask questions, so forth as we go along. Feel free to do that. And the other opportunity you have for that is the chat box. If you see the little button there, I do keep the chat box on my end open. So if you'd rather type your comment or question, feel free to do that. Council member, if you hear us and have anything you'd like to say, feel free to just unmute yourself as we get started here, and I will shut up for a minute. But thanks again for joining us. Three things I'm going to do really tonight. One is I'm going to go through a little background on the traffic calming program and how Harpeth Valley got inducted into it. Secondly, we're going to take a look at the plan, a very preliminary plan that we have put together for the street, and I'd like to get your thoughts on that. And then the last thing, just give you some next steps where we're headed and some time frame information for how this process works. But a little bit about traffic calming. The more projects we do, it seems like the more Nashvillians get more and more familiar with what we do. But this is a residential street program. We really focus on neighborhoods. We don't do so much calming in commercial areas or industrial areas. We really focus on where houses are. And I know this may be an issue or a comment with you all on this street, because I know you have some development coming there at the end of the street. And so if you have any questions related to that and how it might affect traffic calming, we can discuss that. But this is a residential program. We do focus on physical solutions, things that we put in the right of way, speed cushions or things you drive over or things you drive around. We have found those to be the most effective way to slow traffic down. We do have some other tools we'll talk about, but we really like to focus on those physical solutions. And then we do focus on speeding. That seems pretty obvious, but sometimes people will engage the program hoping that we can push traffic to some other street in some other way. Again, this is you all are a little bit unique in this. I don't think there's another way out. You're kind of on a one way in, one way out on this street, more or less. And so, but we really do focus on speed and not so much trying to divert traffic to some other street. We know that we don't do this in a vacuum. We've got great partners doing other types of work that is related. We do focus on the engineering part. That's the mainstay of what NDOT is all about, things in the right of way. But there's an enforcement component with speeding, obviously, and our partners at MNPD are very supportive of this program. And sometimes we wish that they may have more resources to park a cruiser and write tickets and do more enforcement. But I know we all understand they just have a lot of very important work that they're trying to do and don't always have the resources to do that. And so if we can put something in the right of way that's there 24 hours a day, always working, then that's a positive. A lot of people see that as a positive for their street. Also an education component with some public service announcements and some other things related to speed. That's also an important part of traffic calming as well. One of the things we like to remind folks about why we do this type of work is simply because of the safety aspect to it. A lot of neighbors see traffic calming as a quality of life issue. It very much is, but there's also a safety component that is very real. And so we like to show this graphic just having to do with the survivability of a crash between a pedestrian and a car, and the chances of you walking away or surviving in any case, a crash with a car go way up if that car is traveling at a slower speed. And so that's true in neighborhoods here as well, where we do have a higher possibility of people just out walking, enjoying the evening, or doing things in their neighborhoods. Traffic calming continues to be a very popular program. It's a very much requested service of Metro government. In this latest cohort, where Harpeth Valley is one of the streets, we had over 500 requests just like this one for traffic calming. And that just goes to say that you're not alone in some of the issues you've been having in speeding. We're aware of those. And also to say that with that much requests, that many demands, there is a prioritization process that has to go along with that. So we know, of all those requests that come out, which ones are the most stringent. I would also point out here too that normally we're doing 50 neighborhoods, 50 streets a year. This past summer, there was some surplus budget funds that council saw fit to allocate toward additional traffic calming projects, and so we were able to do a little bit more here lately. But that just means there's a lot of work going in the traffic calming arena, and so these projects are making their way to the street. One thing that we like to point out is Hub Nashville. If you're not familiar with that, hub.nashville.gov is a great resource for us here in Davidson County. It's basically a clearinghouse for all types of requests of Metro government. You can also call 311, but the website's great and allows you to log those requests. And we point this out because sometimes in traffic calming, people may say, well, can we get another stop sign somewhere? Or what we really need is a sidewalk, and all those things are very legitimate requests. And but we just don't have the resources to tackle those in this program. Those are done by other offices at NDOT. And so the best way to initiate those types of requests is through Hub Nashville. But back to the prioritization, where we got so many requests, we have to put a structure to that. This is how we do it. 70% of the score that we attach to each project request comes from the types of data that you probably figure it comes from. It's the amount of traffic on a street, the volume, as well as the speed. And we do measure that with engineering tools every time there is an application window open. The other 30% of the score comes from some of those other users, like we were talking about, pedestrians in particular. We look at, is there a documented instance of a pedestrian crash? That's 15%. Are there other types of accommodations, such as sidewalks or bikeways, or the lack of those accommodations? You all don't have sidewalks on this street. Probably most of the streets we do traffic calming on do not have any sidewalks. And that raises your score. That makes it more important that we're able to deploy some traffic calming measures. And then last one is trip destinations. Are there things in the area that make it more likely that there are people walking? Are there parks in the area, schools, transit services? Those types of things also tend to boost your score. But in any event, Harpeth Valley is in the program. There's nothing that will change that. We'll talk more about the ballot process and so forth, but this is not a project now that's competing for funding or anything like that. It's simply up to the neighborhood as to whether this is the right tool for you, and you have been introduced into the program at this point. A little bit of the data specific to your street. The speed that was measured here is 37 miles an hour. The 85th percentile that you see there is just sort of a statistical way that in our industry we look at that. What it essentially says is that 15% of the traffic is going faster than 37 miles an hour. And so we look at all of that for all of the streets and order those. And 37 is probably, a little above average, even in terms of the streets that are selected to do traffic calming. So that's a fairly high speed for a residential street like this. You've got a little over 1,000 cars a day. That often surprises people that you have that much. That really doesn't surprise us. That in fact might be a little below average in terms of the volume that we see for these types of projects. So that's pretty typical. And then the street width is it varies a little bit. Looks like it's somewhere around 20 to 24 feet wide. Um, that doesn't make a whole lot of difference to us at this point. It does kind of define the type of traffic calming we might select. But again, pretty typical width there for metro streets. Nothing surprising. And then it's a little over 8/10 of a mile long. That's on the longer side for one of our projects. Most of ours are around half mile, maybe 6/10. This one is a little bit longer. Nothing unusual about that, but I think it can still be a great traffic calming project. And by the way, the limits there are from Highway 100 up to the end of the street at Hallows Drive. And we'll see that here on this next slide in this picture. I'll set the picture a little bit. Harpeth Valley is that kind of pea green line that you see more towards the upper left-hand corner of the map here. You see Highway 70 with that sharp bend in it, and then it goes over to Hallows Drive at the end. The reason it's offset, I wanted to show a couple of those other lines. You see some purple lines in the bottom right, and then a dashed blue line. This map is just a snapshot of an interactive map that is available on NDOT's website. And so if you want to look at this in more detail, you feel free to, I'll put a link up later if you're not familiar with that website. But this is just one of the tools that we have to help folks kind of find their way around the traffic calming program. The purple lines there indicate that a project has been requested. There's been an application put in on that. So if you're out and you wonder about that, if a street may have an application or not, those are shown there. And then the blue lines indicate a project that has a traffic calming project already implemented. And that can be helpful if you're not very familiar with the types of treatments that we're talking about. You want to go visit those and drive over and see what you think. We make that available to you as well. But the green line that is Harpeth Valley right now just indicates that it has been accepted into the program, and we're in this stage right now. We're in the meeting and the design stage. And so you'll see other, if you got on here and panned around all of Davidson County, you'd see a number of other projects that are running similar course with your street as well. Just a few of the tools that we have available. I'll really focus on the ones that we have right now in the program or in the concept for Harpeth Valley. This one is the bread and butter of our program. A lot of people engage traffic calming thinking that it is the speed cushion program. That's okay. We do a lot of these. This makes up probably 95, 99% of the projects that we do are virtually strictly speed cushion projects. And that's for good reason. They work and they're known. We have a lot of experience with them at this point. They hold up well. So for a number of reasons, we like to use this as our go-to feature, and you'll see that the Harpeth Valley is no different. But I will point out a couple of aspects to these. These are, if you're not familiar with them, they are recycled rubber manufactured speed cushions. They make them in a factory, so every one we get is identical. We can vary the length of them, however. Our standard length is a 10.5-foot cushion. That's the one you see in the bottom left-hand picture. But we can make those shorter, down to 7 feet, or we can make them longer, up to 14. The difference being the longer we make them, the less aggressive they are. Maybe you might say the more comfortable they are, and that's just going to lead to a higher speed. Cars feel more comfortable going at a higher speed over them. The 7-footers are really aggressive. They will really give you a pretty good jolt. We reserve those for use in more urban areas where we were really looking for a 12, 15 mile an hour speed at the point of the speed cushions. But 10.5 is our standard. We use that in most cases. Pretty good fit for, kind of semi-urban areas and up to, the typical suburban densities that we have, like in the Bellevue area here. The 14 footers, we really try to reserve more for more outlying rural areas, places that we might be looking for more of a 30-mile-an-hour, 32, 35-mile-an-hour speed on average. A couple other aspects. One is one of the things that we really want to make sure we do in our design, getting back to the width of the road, is to make sure that the speed cushions will be effective across the full width of the road. And what I mean by that is, if people can drive around these, they will. We have learned that. And so we do what we need to make sure that the width of the road is covered. So sometimes you see 2 cushions side by side. Sometimes you might see 3. We've got streets in Nashville that we've done 4 and 5 wide. Just they are that wide of a street. We want to make sure that any cars that are going down the street have to encounter a speed cushion. That's how they work. Sometimes, like on this upper left-hand picture, we'll use the signage to kind of present itself as a barrier, so cars can't drive around. You see, if we know if we leave a relatively flat shoulder there, some cars might use that and actually leave the road to try and drive around. I can't imagine that saves you a lot of time, but we know that people will do it. And like we have in the bottom right-hand picture there, you might see the little white delineator. Again, the intent there is just to make sure we're protecting those edges, to make sure cars cannot drive around. All the rest of the markings and all are identical. We always use the same pattern, and so that application there in the upper left, I would think would be one that'd probably be the most consistent with what we would expect to see on Harpeth Valley. I'll show you that though in more detail. Speed tables are a close cousin. We rarely use these. And the reason, I guess I should have pointed out one more thing on the speed cushions, the reason that there is a break in those and it's not one solid piece all the way across is for emergency vehicle access. There are some critical vehicles, fire trucks, ambulances, and those kind of things that we don't want to slow down as little as possible. And so these cushions have a more limited impact on those wider wheelbase vehicles that can do a little better at straddling these than most of our cars can. But speed tables don't do that. They are one solid piece. There are very occasional times where this makes some sense. We are, I think Parks is using these more in some of their park areas where emergency vehicles didn't quite the consideration it is for us. But anyway, it remains in our program. They work about the same in terms of the impact they have on speeds, and this is just a little bit of data that speaks to that NDOT has collected. I always sort of take this with a grain of salt, because every application is different, every street is different, and you're starting at 37 miles an hour, and so I would expect to see a pretty good reduction in the speed on this street. If we're starting like we were here with a street that only had 31 miles an hour, you get a little bit lesser differential there. But anyway, we're seeing 9 to 12 miles an hour difference in speed. So, but that's great data. But if you just drive on a street that has had speed cushions, you probably see pretty quickly that they're pretty effective. We also have radar feedback signs in our toolbox. This gets back into that educational component that we talked about. It does what it says it does. As you drive, it flashes your speed back up, uses radar to do that. There is some data still coming in about the effectiveness of that. I'd say at the outset, they're very effective. What remains to be seen is how that holds up over time. We will use these in places where we generally don't want or can't use speed cushions. So we don't put speed cushions on a street that has a traffic volume of over 5,000 cars a day. Remember, you have about 1,000, so you're well within that threshold. And if a street is signed at having a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit or more, we don't do speed cushions. And so those are good examples of when we might use a radar feedback sign instead to try and reinforce the speeding aspect. Occasionally we'll do pavement markings. We know that if the road is very wide visually, that can lead to some speeding. So sometimes we'll try to trick the driver into thinking the road is narrower than it is. So that has a place. In more urban areas, we might use something like these treatments, bulb outs and chicanes that, again, try to make use of what is overly wide pavement in some areas. And so we can do that. It can bring about a slower speed in those neighborhoods. And then another tool that we have, we just have not used it very often recently. I think there are some not too far from here, some traffic circles that have been constructed the past few years. But again, we do that very sparingly. You need an awful big intersection, a lot of pavement out there, and that we still see some impacts with special vehicles like school buses, can have a hard time with those. So we just don't do these very often. So this is the part I want to get to. Love to have some feedback from you on. This is the concept we have for Harpeth Valley, and just orient you a little bit. North is pretty well north. It's turned just slightly. So you see Highway 70 down at the bottom where that little stop sign is, and then that's on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, you see our other limit there at Hallows Drive. As I mentioned, this is a fairly long street for us, and there aren't any other stops, no always stops, four-way stops along that way. So that is a little over 4,300 feet of just unbroken street from one end to the other. And the way we arrive, in this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 speed cushion locations. The way we arrive at that is we take the whole length of that street that is unbroken by stop signs, and we divide it by what we want the spacing to be. We have found that if we can space these speed cushions somewhere in the order of 400 to 600 feet, we'll have a good result. That's not so close together that it's just overly obnoxious and forces traffic to go on a different street usually, but also it's close enough together that traffic doesn't clear one set of speed cushions and then hit the gas to get to the next one. They know another one's coming up here in about 500 feet, so I'm just going to hold my speed and progress at that same slow speed, and we're having really good experience with people maintaining that 25 miles an hour generally over the length of the project. So that's how we come up with that. Now there are some complications to that. Hills become a complication, and I know there are some significant grades along the length of this street. This image, we have looked at that from at least a desktop level. I've driven it once, but looking at the actual grades from a desktop level, we think we can get this type of spacing in. I think it'll be a very successful project. The other one is curves. We kept speed cushions out of sharp curves. And then the last one is driveways. But I don't think you have a significant curvature here and driveways. You all have nice big frontages, plenty of space in between driveways for the most part. You can imagine in some neighborhoods in Nashville, it's one driveway after the next, and it's really hard to space speed cushions because we don't want to block somebody's driveway with these. But I don't think we'll have too much issue other than just avoiding the steepest parts of some of those hills that you have, and I think we won't have any problem getting in this number. That will yield us a little over 500 feet spacing, and so I think that will work well for the neighborhood. But I want to stop here. I've talked a lot. I want to stop here and for those of you who are on, if you want to unmute yourself and let me know what you think. Is this what you had in mind or not had in mind, or hoping to see other things, or just what are your thoughts on this?
Hey, Jeff, I'm here at Sherry.
Hey, Councilwoman, sorry I saw your message there. I know you were with us.
I was with you. I don't know what was wrong with the buttons. Nothing worked. I was sitting here going, oh, but I'm here. I'm really here. Yeah. It was silly. So my question about this, we are proposing, or we have determined to put in 4, 5, 6, 7 different speed humps along Harpeth Valley Road from its start to its end, right? Can you hear
Sorry,
me?
yeah, I was coming off mute. That is right. I will qualify that just a little bit. That is the proposal as it stands right now. And I'm going to talk more about the process and how we kind of gel that in. But the way we see from an NDOT perspective is we're here at the neighborhood's pleasure. We've been asked to come in and take a look. It's, we've gone through that prioritization. It's been awarded this project, but there's still a ballot that we go through just to make sure everyone understands what's being proposed and so forth. So that's the proposal right now, correct? That there would
Okay.
be 7 locations of speed cushion.
Okay. So my question then becomes, we have a pretty significant hill rather, right there at the second C coming up off of Highway 70 South. What happens in the winter? How how reflective are they? And reflective may not be the right word, but how reflective are they of snow and ice? And are they going to, retain ice longer? Do we need to be more mindful of that? I mean, I've got, and I know that all of them probably have, there are back road ways to go where you stay flat the whole way. But in the event that somebody wants to go down the hill or try to get up the hill, what's going to happen with those in really inclement snowmageddons?
Yeah, good question. And we've got some very recent experience in that, right? So we were all very anxious to see of all of these cushions that have been deployed over the past year, how are we going to fare in the snow that we had this past winter? And we did not hear of any issues. And a lot of times the question comes up, well, how does this affect snow plows? And I don't know if Harpeth Valley is a plowed street or not, but in any event, it's kind of the same question. So a couple of things. One is that's one of the reasons we don't put speed cushions on the actual slope part of the hill if it's significant enough. Our threshold is 6% grade. We'll come out there before we wrap this up and do a more detailed design plan where we'll take our smart level and we will make sure we're aware of the grades and that we're staying off of anything that's 6% or steeper. So that's one. The other you asked about was just visibility. That reflectiveness is great, but when it's covered with snow, it doesn't reflect very much, and you're right about that. And so that's another aspect to that signage that we have. So
Okay.
the signs that accompany these, really stand out. If this was a plowed route, again, I don't know that it is.
It's not.
Uh, okay, well, the plow drivers we do log those in GPS. They do know where all of these are located. But anyhow, I mean, those are the main things. We're not going to put these directly on the slope, and so there wouldn't be anything to be covered. Now, even in flat areas, if there's a lot of snow, it would have to be an awful lot of snow for you not to see. There's at least the outline of the cushion there. I think they generally remain pretty visible even in pretty heavy snow conditions. And this is not a neighborhood that people just kind of wander in, particularly in heavy snow conditions. Everyone that lives here will be pretty familiar with the locations of these, I would think. So I don't think the snow will give us just an unusually difficult situation.
Hey, Jeff, when you send out the ballot for this, how far are you going to go from Harpeth Valley, number one? Number two, is it possible to give me a copy of one of these maps that I can put on our 2 neighborhood Facebook pages to let people know what they're going to be getting and give them, kind of a heads up before they get this and call me freaking out?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Um, it's kind of it's the pro and the con and how we make all of this available. For this
Okay.
meeting tonight, we have invited the people that live along Harpeth Valley Road. That is also true with how we ballot. I'm gonna show you very specifically how we will ballot the project. We know the people that live on Bellevue Manor, the people that live on Hickory Hollow, the people that live on Indian Springs, all use this road every day, just like the people that live on Harpeth Valley Road. But
Right.
what we have made as a policy decision in the city, because every project is like that, and some streets, the street that we're trying to traffic calm has very few people actually living on it. Most of the people live off of it, and so it becomes kind of a dilemma. Who do you ask and who do you poll and all of that kind of stuff. So we have made the policy decision that we're going to invite the people to the meeting and ballot the people who are most impacted by the high speeds. Because what we find, if you live off the street, you may be the one speeding. You don't see it every day for sure. Even though you use the street every day, you're not nearly as impacted by the speeds. And so we really limit that input to the folks actually living on the street.
Okay, that's fair.
That's not to say these meetings especially, we're happy to have everybody attend, and we want people to know about it and all of that. But sometimes that just gets aggravating if we invite you to come to the meeting and then tell you, well, by the way, you're not going to get to vote.
Okay.
There's kind of a downside to that. So let me show you. I'll come back to this other stuff, but the ballot process. You asked how far we come off of it. We don't come off of it at all. To get a ballot to vote for this project, the parcel that you own has to abut the right of way of Harpeth Valley. And so you might have a different address. You may have a Harpeth Valley Court address, but only if you live on the corner there. Your property has to abut the right of way of the street that we're working with. There are, I think in this case, there looks like Harpeth Valley Place, maybe one small, either it's a condominium or an HPR or something where it looks like two residences on one parcel down there in the bottom left. We do ballot both of those folks with the philosophy that, well, they own that parcel in common. They both own, a share of the parcel that abuts our right of way. Those they will get to vote. I'll step back and talk a little bit more about that ballot process while we're here. When it comes time to do that, we will send out cards, much like we did for this meeting, to the folks, that are balloted. Now, it's important also that these are the property owners. So if a person is renting their property, they're renting their house, they may not get that card. We will send that to the owner's address on file through the property assessor's office. So we send those out. We keep that. It's pretty simple. There's a QR code on it. It takes you to a Nashville.gov website where you put in some information and just vote that you're for the project or you're not. And at the end of that 6-week period, we'll look at all of those responses, and if 2/3 of them are in favor of the project, we will move that forward. So that's how that works. And then again, we talked about that. I don't think we have any businesses out here. We may have a commercial property down there. I know there's some development being proposed down there. So that is a commercial property, or it's vacant, or both. In either case, we don't ballot those folks. We only ballot residential properties.
Are you talking about the front property, Jeff?
Yes, ma'am. Down there
on the left.
on the highways.
That's the TriStar Emergency Department that's going in.
Okay. So yeah, we wouldn't ballot them. They probably wouldn't respond anyway.
Okay.
Let me, because I know that was kind of an issue when we talked several weeks ago. So I just wanted to point that out here, that the first cushion wouldn't be until after that little cul-de-sac there. So I don't think whatever happens, I know nothing's been settled down there. At least I don't think it has. Whatever happens down there, we're kind of indifferent to it, because our project won't really start until traffic gets a little further back into the actual neighborhood. So,
yeah, and there's not going to be an impact there at all. The changes to the traffic flow are going to happen right at Highway 70 and Harpeth Valley Road. So it's not going to impact this at all.
Okay, great. All right, a little bit about the process here. This looks really complicated. It's really not. We're at the red circle here now at the neighborhood meeting. What we will be doing after tonight, if you all say that looks about like what we expected, we're going to move on into the design phase, where we will come out and actually take some more detailed measurements and get a much more detailed idea of where we want to put the speed cushions. They'll look pretty close to what you have here, but we'll actually spot those on the ground, and we will make a set of design plans available to you via the website, where it will have information down to the detail of like this set of speed cushions will be 67 feet from the driveway at 123 Harpeth Valley. It'll be that level of detail. So if you're interested and want to know exactly where the speed cushions will go, you will have that information available to you. That will be on the website along with once the ballot comes out. That will be available. We don't ballot unless we've got the design plans where somebody can get in there and get as much information as they want to about the project. Once that's ready, we'll release that online ballot. And again, that stays open for 6 weeks. And then after that, if assuming it's a successful vote, we will move it into the construction queue. And that's where the bad news comes. Right now, after the close of these ballots, we're still sitting at about a year of lead time. I think NDOT is cutting into that. I think that, they've been working really hard to try and find different ways. It's a contractor issue. They just don't have the manpower, the contracting ability, and so they're working with the contractors that they have to move those projects faster. But it is. I just say that so you don't think by the summertime you're going to have traffic calming. It's probably not going to happen. It's going to be a little longer than that. So. The other thing I would point out here too is after tonight, this is the neighborhood meeting that we're doing tonight. Now, in the past, we have had 2 mandatory meetings, but what we found was we'd come back to the second meeting and people would say, you kind of showed us this last time. We didn't really learn anything new this meeting. I wish we had just gone straight to the ballot and cut some of the time off. So we do make that available to you. We like to not do a second meeting and just move straight in, but if you had objections or think we ought to take a look at something, we're happy to do that and come back to you again. But it does add several weeks to the process. But that's a decision for y'all. Just let me know if you think we need to get back together again. I haven't heard anything that would make me think that, but again, your call on that. I think that's all of the information. Let's see. We talked about the ballot. Who gets to vote. There's some contact information there. I'm Jeff, the one in green below. And if we get done tonight, you think of something that you didn't ask or that I didn't cover very well, feel free to email me or feel free to email the NDOT folks there at that NDOT TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov or email both of us and ask that question. Make sure we have covered everything that you would want to know or concerns that you have. And that doesn't have to stop tonight. You can feel free to reach out to us. There's the link to the NDOT website. If you're not familiar with it, that goes straight to the Traffic Calming webpage. There's a lot of information there. Process manuals, that map that I showed you. You can see other neighborhood design plans if you want to see the level of detail of that. They've even got the historical voting records, how many neighborhoods have passed and failed. So if you're interested in that, you can see all of that. That's also where you will find a link to this meeting here in the next couple of days. So if you want to direct someone to watch this meeting, that will be available there. Anything else? I don't want to keep you, but I don't want to shortchange you either. So any other questions or comments or concerns? Well, we certainly appreciate your time here and your interest in the project and in safer streets. And feel free again to reach out in the meantime if we can be of use. I'm going to proceed on the assumption that we'll move into that design phase, get those plans in order, post those, and then move into the ballot process. But if you have any concerns about that, feel free to reach out.
That sounds great, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you all, and appreciate it again. Hope you have a great rest of your evening. Thanks.
Thanks,
Jeff.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Sherry. Thank you.
You're welcome anytime.